Happy New Year. It's the Saturday Cup of Joe from Detroit. Hope you had a wonderful week, whether you were working, whether you were taking some time off, a combination of the two. Happy New Year. Here's to a happy, healthy, productive 2021. I've got my cup of Joe here. I've got my vacation mustache going. So we're already well into 2021. One of the things I was looking at over the last couple days was various New Year's Eve or New Year's Day traditions from around the world. In our family, we eat pork and sauerkraut on New Year's Day for good luck. My wife, her family, same thing. And so we've carried on that tradition. So yesterday we had pork and sauerkraut. And my daughter had never heard, she's a seven-year old, she'd never heard of New Year's resolutions. So during dinner, we were describing the concept of New Year's resolutions and making a resolution that is about behavior or about your life or about something you want to either start or stop in the new year. And so it's really interesting to watch a kid try to parse through, like, well, why? Because it's a new year? Okay. Well, and she ended up, I think, not having one, frankly, after the conversation. But I found some submissions to Atlas Obscura, one of my favorite websites, just because it's so interesting, where people had sent in the traditions that their family or their culture participated in. And there were some you probably heard about, the eating 12 grapes at midnight. In Spain, the church bells or the town bells ring 12 times at midnight, and on each ring, you eat a grape. That's good luck. There was ones I had never heard about. A lot of stuff about finding the darkest haired person in the family or the darkest haired person in the house and having them do something. In some cases, it was like tossing water out the front door. In some cases, it was putting water next to the front door outside. It was a lot about cleanliness, luck, financial success. There was one family that like puts their wallets on the ground and jumps over them. So it was like all, refreshing, restarting, or declaring good luck in your health, in your finances, in your home, in your community for the next year. So I'll definitely put the whole list if you want to go through all of them, if it's of interest to you, in the links. But it was something that, whether you're doing a New Year's resolution or not, is kind of interesting to think about. Why do we choose the new year? And why do we need a reset? Why do we think in that way? Why do we react in that way? So, do you do New Year's resolutions? I guess is my question. Are you someone who's going to be looking at New Year's resolutions this year? Have you already made one? Have you already kept it or broken it on January 2nd? There was a Fast Company article that had the 7 alternatives to setting New Year's resolutions. And I think, for what it's worth, it did spark a couple of interesting ideas. One was it didn't mention Marie Kondo, but Marie Kondo is the lifestyle designer who tells you to look around your space, your house, your office, pick up objects and try to determine if those objects bring you happiness and if they do, keep them, and if they don't, get rid of them. It's a way of clearing sort of the clutter, the things that don't bring you happiness out of your life, and bringing some organization and intentionality to your space. The article mentions making a list of things that make you happy and things that bum you out. And so then you have a better sense of working towards what makes you happy, eliminating or to the best of your ability removing what doesn't. And it almost struck me as, you could go through that process either in a journal or on an actual list, taking the things that aren't visible to you in your life or in your office and saying, okay, does this activity, does this time bring me happiness? And if it doesn't, why not? And then trying to move towards those things, eliminating the things that bum you out. That's actually a better practice than a New Year's resolution. I thought I haven't started that process yet, but I am thinking a lot about it. Just read this article this week, so something to think about. The other thing it mentioned is adding a skill. So instead of trying to create a habit right off the bat, think about working towards a skill over the years. Pick a skill or something you'd like to experience throughout the year, and then working towards it. Adding one skill a year type of idea. And what you've heard me write or speak about making things incrementally easier for people. One thing about the Saturday Cup of Joe is making it incrementally easier to think about an idea, or incrementally easier for your clients or your customers to access your products and services, and trying to highlight those businesses that do that really well and ask if yours does. Ask your team that, ask you. So in your own life, it's the same thing. How do I make it incrementally easier to get where I'm trying to go, to head towards my goal? And in some cases, these articles or whomever will recommend you put the idea next to your mirror, you hang a word or a motto around your office, remaining focused. There's a business equivalent to that too, which is simply you get what you measure. Anytime you're trying to change the direction of a team or make sure that an area of your business, your team, your company remains an area of focus, you just measure it. And if you measure it week over week, people work towards that goal. People want to exceed expectations. They want to be well compensated and seen as successful, and they go towards the things that leadership or whomever is measuring. Do the same thing for yourself. Whether it's a happy list, whether it's the skill, whether you're looking to measure something. I mean, the article says to really pick out a word or a theme for the year. I don't know that that's necessary as long as you're just measuring where you're trying to go. And if you're working towards happiness and you're working towards a skill, then you're likely to be more successful doing that. But the whole idea is the the improvement, self-improvement, improvement of your team or your company, improvement of your community, improvement of the world. And there was another Fast Company article that kind of linked off of what I was reading, and it sucked me in. And it was, the 10 most exciting world-changing ideas of 2020. The reason I wanted to link to this one actually had to do with how we challenge ourselves to think differently about the world. And there was stuff in there that I know is controversial and that people want to just reject outright. Canceling rent is an example of an idea from the list that they call one of the most exciting ideas of 2020 that a lot of people just categorically be like, that's not possible. And I think the value in breaking apart the canceling rent idea and thinking about it has nothing to do with whether the end result would actually look the same as the idea that was proposed, but how along the way do you find the innovation and change that is really powerful? Especially in our industry, if you're watching this talking mortgage or real estate or fintech, then the component parts of why cancel rent is an exciting idea are hugely impactful to innovation and change in our industry. I think that similarly, there's an idea in there about reinventing cities. It's not necessarily about a total reinvention of every city in America because that's too much. But if you think about how cities are going to have to respond to the money that was spent in COVID response, to the lack of revenue, whether it's around real estate taxes, sales tax, sales and tourism in our cities, cities are going to have to come up with some sort of response financially to what's happening. And the article references Austin, Texas, which has an influx of people coming off the coast, and they're using property tax and transaction taxes to take this kind of bonus money they didn't expect, put it into the city, walking paths, parks, bike lanes. But that reinvention part is true for all of us, whether it's a city, whether it's you in your New Year's resolutions, whether it's your team in your business and you're thinking about it as a leader. How can you kind of take these trends, break them apart, and find out what's meaningful to your customers, what's meaningful to your family, what's meaningful to your community, and start to make those changes? Work towards happiness, work towards productivity, add a skill. If we just make things incrementally easier for those around us, we're all innovating and changing in the right direction, and we're likely to have a much more sustainable change than dramatic all or nothing resolutions. And in the spirit of thinking differently and challenging some basic assumptions, I came across an Atlantic article that I think really challenges some thinking. And it doesn't go very deep. It's surface level, kind of fun, what I would say challenge and innovation. But it takes The Simpsons, the TV show, the family, The Simpsons, and declares that the lifestyle at the beginning of The Simpsons is no longer available to that equivalent Simpsons family in 2021. And when I was a kid, I was in sixth grade when this show Boy Meets World came out. Boy Meets World was about a sixth grader, and so I was very interested in the show as a result of being the exact same age as the main character. But they used to joke about watching TV. Were they allowed to stay up for the Tonight Show and all the things that TV and movies were teaching them on a show? It was kind of interesting to see a show referencing other shows and movies. But my point is, the best friend in the show Sean Hunter says, TV is the true mirror of our lives. And my best friend Adam and I used to say the same thing. TV is the true mirror of our lives. So let's just, for the thought experiment, if The Simpsons is the true mirror of our lives, the Atlantic would ask, and this post, the author would ask, what does that say about middle class America? And how did The Simpsons, sort of the working class um, role at the power plant? I think there was in one of the early seasons a flash of Homer Simpson's paycheck, and then they adjust that paycheck for 2021, and they say, all right, this family of five would be living on, I think it's $62,000 a year. Maybe it was $49,000 a year on the paycheck, and they adjusted it for 60. That's not my point. My point is, it caused somebody to tweet, and I don't know this person, so I'm just reading what they tweeted to kind of like spark the question, which is, this show was originally about a dysfunctional family barely clinging to the middle class in the aftermath of the Reagan administration, and it's now aspirational as what the tweet says: American capitalism has declined, and this family is now what most people would like to have and cannot have: the car, the house, um, the steady paycheck. And I don't know if that's true. And so I'm putting it out there as a really interesting thought experiment to say, when we think across the whole economy, first of all, who is thinking across the whole economy, and is it realistic to assume that somebody, a politician, a president, would have a plan broad enough and deep enough to address some of the systemic things? But what's interesting in the tweet, just because I know it'll make it controversial in people's minds when you reference the Reagan administration, it makes it immediately political. But then also on top of that is, how do we feel about watching a TV show track that many years of American cultural life? Because it is a cultural criticism, whether you agree with this person's theory or not. My point is, as you think about New Year's resolutions, the personal ones, the very, very discreet ones we were talking about earlier, or the really large resets that happen around cultural moments, which we're obviously in. It's a cultural moment. Social media is engaging us globally. Cultural trends and ideas are flying around much faster. The speed of the game in our personal lives and our professional lives is faster than ever. Customers have higher expectations as a result. I'm sure that your employees and your team members have much higher expectations as well. And so, as we're seeing this speed, we're also in a moment of reset. In the United States, at least, it's a presidential reset. There are massive questions about culture, about society, about the economy, and what it means. American identity is actually a large question. I know I always take things up to the macro, to the global, but in this year, in the way we're talking about things and the way we're thinking about things, I thought it was helpful to kind of go really down in the dirt and talk about, individual resolutions that we make and why we make them in January and why we think about them as happiness, or as incremental improvement, and then also blow it back up to the clouds, to the massive, global trends that will affect how people spend their money. If you're in the real estate mortgage industry, are people moving around this year? Are people going to leave cities? Are they going to invest in cities? Are businesses going to go fully remote? Are they going to continue to bring people back into a corporate headquarters, a high rise? I know I ask these questions all the time without a lot of answers, but these trends will have an impact on your business. They will have an impact on your life. And maybe you're sitting there making some of those decisions right now. My point is simply how we are comfortable even thinking about innovation and change. Getting comfortable thinking about it then makes us comfortable to be able to address it and do something about it. And if you can make it incrementally easier for yourself by bringing happiness and focusing on the things that bring you happiness and removing the things that bum you out, you can make it incrementally easier on your customers and your clients to access your products, your services. You can make it incrementally easier on your team. And by doing that, we're thinking more holistically about value. We're thinking more holistically about the economy, and we're thinking more holistically about our communities. And that's really been the goal of the Saturday Cup of Joe, I think, especially lately. So happy New Year. Thank you so much for your time as usual. I'll put some links and pictures and quotes in there to go along with the video. But really glad that you're watching and appreciate your time. Happy New Year.